we're going to move on to the second example, which basically has to do with establishing loan amortization schedules. This will basically help you understand and see, or basically apply everything that you've learned from the beginning you started learning or talking about time value of money or studying it per se. And this is something I feel Mr. Kaira tends to focus on. If you look at some of those past papers, mostly amortization schedules never miss when it comes to time value of money, because I think this is what he uses to assess whether you've truly understood the concepts of time value. And so this is where everything comes into play. You basically have to apply all your knowledge of time value on questions like this. So let's get into it so that we can help this process be easy for you, and so that when you write the test, all you're thinking about is just the A plus that you're going to get afterwards, right? So we're just going to go through a few concepts, see how to do with certain situations, and this will help you basically, prepare for what is coming ahead. So without wasting much time, let's go to part B of question two. And under the required here, I'm sure you can see from my screen or from the screen. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, that was too much. Okay, yeah. So here, part B of the required part says establish loan amortization schedules to whole numbers for a 10-month loan of 20,000 kwacha with equal installment payments at the end of each month. The interest rate is 24% per annum. All right. So I really want us to pay attention to what exactly is going on here, because um, each and every single detail in this question will determine whether you get the full marks or you basically lose out on everything. So it's very important for you to pay attention to the language, the wording. Every single element is important. Understanding each and every part or aspect of this question is important. So we're going to break it down so that we know what exactly to focus on, even as we start basically establishing or creating this loan amortization schedule. So it says, again, the question says, establish loan amortization schedules to whole numbers. Whole numbers. So that's the first point. Sometimes he might give you a question that says to two decimal places, or sometimes he might say whole numbers, or sometimes he might say to one decimal place. It just depends with how he feels, because he knows he repeats questions sometimes, so he likes to switch things up. So he might give you whole numbers, he might give you decimal places, two decimal places. So it's very important for you to basically focus on what the question is saying, because if you put whole numbers where it says two decimal places, you're definitely getting the question wrong. If you put two decimal places where it says whole numbers, you're definitely getting the question wrong. So it's important to follow instructions. So take your time, do not rush, but take it slowly. Understand what exactly the question is requiring you of, and do the right thing. We're here to awaken your A plus mentality, so you need to pay attention. An A plus student pays attention to each and every single detail. So it says establish loan amortization schedules to whole numbers for a 10-month loan of 20,000. 10-month loan. So we're going to highlight that because that's very important. Okay, and this is the deposit, or basically the loan at the beginning or in the current period, okay, that we are getting, with equal installment payments at the end of each month. End of each month. Equal installment payments at the end of each month. So remember our definition of what an ordinary annuity is and what an annuity due is. Remember that annuity dues, usually payments to do with annuity dues, payment or receipts of annuity dues usually come at the beginning of the cash flow period or the time period, and payments or receipts to do with ordinary annuities usually come at the end of the time period or the cash flow period, right? So in this case, we know that at the end means ordinary annuity. So we have established that this is an ordinary annuity. Okay, now that we understand that, let's move on to the next part. The interest rate is 24% per annum. This is also something very important to take note of. 24% per annum. So if you look at the question, it says whole numbers for 10 months, right? For 10 months of, but for a 10-month loan of 20,000. 10 months at the end of each month. You look at this part, 10 month, end of each month. Yet our interest rate says 24% per annum. Per annum just simply means per year. So automatically you see there's a problem there, right? And if you're too quick and too jumpy to start answering the question because, oh no, this is easy, you're definitely going to get this wrong, because there are certain elements that you need to understand in such a scenario. So when you have months, when you have your number of years or number of periods in months, and then your interest rate is basically in years, you need to know that you need to basically make certain adjustments, and these adjustments means converting your interest rate into a monthly interest rate rather than a yearly interest rate. So you're going to have to basically convert your yearly interest rate into a monthly interest rate. If you're given a situation where it says in 10 years, a 10-year loan, and then this is in years, then you're just fine. You can just go straight forward and just go ahead and solve, right? But in this case, it says months at the end of each month, and your interest rate is per annum, which is per year. There's a problem there. So you need to adjust to ensure that your percentage, your interest rate is also in months. So we're going to do that shortly. So now that we've understood certain parts, or if not or the entire part of the question, what is required of us, let's go ahead and now start solving this, or basically solving this amortization schedule. So we're going to have first to start with finding what our stream of cash flows are. But in order for us to find our stream of cash flows, we need to be able to adjust our interest rate to ensure that it's a monthly interest rate. And we also need to basically find what the present value interest factor of an annuity or this ordinary annuity is. So, but we're going to see that. So let's start. So our formula here is just going to be um, our formula here is going to be PVA of an annuity, or an ordinary annuity in this case, right? Or sometimes you can just put present value zero at period zero. But anyway, we can put PVA. So present value of an ordinary annuity at period zero. That's what the O there means. And then we're going to say equals the stream. R just means the stream of cash flows that we are supposed to basically pay, right? The equal installments that we are supposed to pay, which we do not know in this case. We're going to multiply that by the present value interest factor of an annuity, right? Then we're just going to put our little I there, our percentage, and number of periods, and then we're going to close brackets. If this was an annuity due, we're going to add 1 plus I here, right? We're going to add 1 plus I here. But since this is an ordinary annuity, we don't need to do that. We just need to leave it as it is, right? So we know what our present value, right? The present value of our annuity is in this case, and we know that it's this 10,000 over here. Sorry, I'm actually erasing that, but we know that it's this 10,000 over, this 20,000 rather, over here. So we're going to put 20,000. All right. So we're going to put 20,000 here. Okay. Do we know what our equal installments are? No, we don't. So we're going to leave it as R. But do we also know what our present value interest factor is? No, we don't, because remember, we still have to convert the interest rate into months, from years into months. And that's the only way we're going to go to the amortization scale, the annuity table, and basically find what our present value interest factor is at that particular percentage. So we cannot do that without knowing what the percentage is. So with that, we're going to have to solve for the interest rate, what the interest rate is in months. So if you remember from the frequency of compounding formula, we had this little part here, which was I is over M, right? Let me just erase that and do that again. So we had I is over M, yeah? I over M, or I divided by M, which is interest rate divided by, this is basically number of compounding per year, right? The number of compounding per year. So our M is the number of compounding per year. So in this case, we know what our I is, right? In this case, it's 24%, right? So it's 24%. So we're going to have to substitute that. So we're going to say 24%. In fact, to make this much easier, instead of saying 24% directly, we're going to convert this into decimals, right? So 24% divided by 100, which will give us 0.24, 0.24, right? Which is basically 24%. All right. So, and then we're going to have to divide that by M, the number of compounding per year. But in order for us to know what the number of compounding is per year, we need to look at the situation. So it's months, right? We're dealing with months here. So if we're dealing with months, we need to know how many months are in a year. So we know that the number of months in a year are how many? Are 12. So we're going to divide this 24%, or 0.24, by 12. 12 months, because that's the number of compounding. So we're basically compounding, the interest rate is per month, right? So we're compounding per month. So we know that in a year there are 12 months. So we're going to divide the 24% by 12 in order to convert the percentage into a monthly percentage, right? So we have 12 months. So 0.24 divided by 12% will give us 0.02. All right, so that's what we have here. If we want to make sure we can still calculate, because some people want to ensure that what I'm doing is right. So 0.24 divided by 12 will give us 0.02. Multiply that by 100%. So when we multiply that by 100%, it will give us how much? It will give us exactly 2%. Right. So that's our percentage. Okay, fine. We found that. Therefore, now we need to come back here and find what our R is. So now that we know our percentage, we can go ahead and find our R. But we can go ahead and find our present value interest factor using the annuity table. In order to find our present value interest factor, we're over an annuity, we're going to go down to our table, our annuity table, and we're going to go down just under 2. And here we have periods. Usually we define these periods in years, but whether it's years or months, we can still use the periods. We do not have to convert anything in this case when we're looking at the table. Sometimes it will be 10 years, but in this case, since we're dealing with months, it's 10 months. So we're going to go at 2%, and then we're going to go where it says 10. So it's here at 10. At 10, we have how much? We have 8.983. So that's our present value interest factor, 8.983. Okay, so this is a 3 here, don't get confused please. So 8.983, that's what we have there. So that's our present value interest factor. So now we need to find what R is. So we need to make R the subject of the formula. So we're going to make R the subject of the formula by dividing both sides with 8.983. 8.983. Right, so we have 8 here point. Okay, now that we have that, obviously we know that we can do a cancel all. So we're going to cancel this and cancel that, and then we're going to have R, and then we're going to divide this 8.983 into 20,000, right? So that is going to give us an equal installment per month of 2,226, right? Remember, it's whole numbers, right? Whole numbers. So we need to leave this in whole numbers. If you look at your answer there, it's in decimals, right? The answer when you calculate, it's in decimals. But since we're dealing with whole numbers, we're going to say 2,226, right? That's it. Whole numbers. Not decimals, not two decimal places, but whole numbers. And that is our equal installment. Now we are done with that part. We now need to move on to the next segment. Now that we found what our equal installments are, or equal installment payments of 2,226, and we've also found what our interest rate per month is going to be, which is 2% in this case, we can now go ahead and fill in our loan amortization schedule. Okay, so to begin with, in our first column here, we're going to have our periods, in this case, which is months. Since we're dealing with months, we're going to have months, so we're going to say end of month. If we had years, we're going to say end of year. Yeah, so we're going to have end of month in the first column, and then in the second column, we're going to be dealing with payments, which is our equal installment payments in this case. And we know that our equal installment payments for the entire 10-month period is 2,226. So this is where they're going to come. So we're going to have payments here. Okay, so we have payments there. And then in our third column, we're going to have interest. So remember that our interest per month is 2%. And so each and every calculation that we make based on our interest rate per month is going to come into the third column. So we're going to have interest here. So that's our interest. And then in the fourth column, we're going to have our principal, right? Our principal amount. Okay, that's principal. I hope you can see that or make sense of it at least. Anyway. And then in the last column now we're going to have our ending balance. That's what we're going to have here in our last column. So we have end of month in the first column, payments in the second column, interest in the third column, principal in the fourth column, and ending balance in the fifth column. All right, so now that we have these, so to just quicken the process, I'm just going to quickly fill in the end of month or the periods here. So we're going to have period 0 all the way up to period 10. Those are our periods all the way from 0 down to 10 months, okay, from 0 months to 10 months. And then now we are going to now start filling in the rest of the columns and rows. So in period 0, do we have any payments? No, we don't. So we're not making any installment payment in period 0, so we're going to cross that. Are we making any interest payment? No, we're not, so we're going to cross that. Okay, how about the principal? Same. We're not making any, we do not have any principal in period 0 at this point. But what we do have is our ending balance. What is our ending balance? It's the very loan that we've gotten, the very loan of 220,000. That's what we have at the outset, at the beginning of the period 0. So we're going to have 20,000 in this column, in the ending balance column. So we're going to have 20,000. Okay, so that's our 20,000 there. Okay, so now that we have our 20,000 there, we're going to continue filling up the rest of the columns. So we know that we're going to have equal installment payments, right, for the entire period of 10 months. So starting from period 1 all the way to period 10, we're going to have equal installment payments of 2,226. So we're just going to have to put everything without having to calculate anything yet, since we already know what our payments are. So we're just going to write down everything from period 1 all the way to period 10. What I've done now is fill up the entire column of payments except for the row where we have period 10 or month 10 in this case. The reason being is that the last payment, we're going to have to make a special adjustment towards the end. So doing it now would be a terrible mistake, because this is what's going to determine whether we're getting a correct answer or a wrong answer. Okay, so we're going to leave period 10 blank for now, and then we're going to deal with it towards the end. So we can go ahead and start with the interest and the principal and the ending balances. Okay, so we know that in order for us to get the principal, or sorry, the interest, we're going to have to multiply our interest rate per month by 20,000. Okay, so we're going to multiply 20,000, which is our ending balance for period 0, by 2%. So we're going to have 20,000 times 0.02, which is 2%. And then we're going to get what? 400. So we're going to put 400. Okay, so we have our 400 there. And then in order for us to get the principal, we're going to have to subtract 400 from 2,226 here in period 1, right? So 2,226 minus 400, we're going to get 1,826. So we're going to get 1,826 as our principal. Okay, so we have 1,826. And then in order to find our ending balance for period 1, we're going to now have to subtract our principal of 1,826 in period 1 from our ending balance in period 0 of 20,000. Okay, so we're going to subtract 20,000 minus this this 1,826. So that will be minus 1,826, which will give us 18,174 as our ending balance for period 1. Okay, so we now need to find the interest for period 2. How are we going to do that? We're going to do the same thing. We're going to multiply the ending balance of period 1, which is 18,174, by our interest rate per month, which is 2%. So 18,174 times 0.02 or 2%, which will give us 364. Okay, this is what happens. But how do we get the 364? Because we have a decimal when we initially do the actual calculation, right? So when we multiply 18,000, which is the ending balance of period 1, we multiply it by 2%, we get 363.48. This is what we get. Okay, 0.48. So this is an 8 here on at the end. When we round off, 363.48, which is this, we're going to have 363 or 363.5, which is what we have here. Okay, so we're going to further round this off to 364. Okay, so round off the 5, it will give us 364, which is what we have here in our column here of in our interest column. All right. Now that we have this 364, we're going to now have to subtract it from 2226. So we're going to subtract 364 from 2226. So we're going to have 2226 minus 364, which will give us 1862. 1862 as our principal. Okay, that's what we have now. 1862 as our principal, and then we're going to now have to subtract this principal from our period 1 ending balance of 18,174. Okay, so to do that, we're just going to do 18,174 minus 1,862, which is our principal here for period 2. And then when we do that calculation, it gives us 16,312. Okay, it gives us 16,312 as our ending balance for what? For period 2. That's our ending balance for period 2. Again, in order for us to find the interest for period 3, we're going to have to multiply 2% by the ending balance for period 2, which is 16,312. So by 0.02, which gives us an interest payment of 300, and 26. This is what we have here. We have 326 as our interest, and then this interest we're going to subtract it from 2226, which is our installment. Okay, so 2226 minus 326, which will give us 1900 as our principal for period 3. 1900 as our principal for period 3. Okay, that's what we have there. And then this principal for period 3, we're going to subtract it from the ending balance for period 2, which is 16,312, in order to get our ending balance for period 3. Okay, so we're going to subtract 1,900 from 16,312, and that will give us 14,412. Okay, that's what we have there. So you can see the pattern here of what exactly is going on, right? So this procedure is going to continue throughout. So we're going to do this until the end when we reach period 10. So again, we now need to find what the interest is for period 4. So we're going to multiply 2% by the ending balance for period 3, which is 14,412. So we're going to say multiplied by 0.02, which is 2%. Okay, and it will give us an interest of 288. Remember, you're going to find decimals on certain areas, so you need to ensure that they are whole numbers, because that's the instruction we've been given in the question, whole numbers. Yeah, so our interest there is 288. So we're going to subtract this 288 from 2226. Okay, so 2026 minus 288, which will give us 1938. 1938 as our principal for period 4. Okay, now we want to find the ending balance for period 4. In order to do that, we're going to subtract the principal from period 4 from the ending balance of period 3, which is 14,412. So 1938, deduct that from 14,412. Okay, so 14,412 minus 1,938 gives us 12,474. Right? In order to now get the interest rate for period 5, we're going to do the same procedure over and over again until period 10. So I'm going to do this quickly. Okay, so this is how our amortization schedule now looks like after filling in most parts of it. So we can see here from period 9 or month 9 that we have our payment obviously of 2,226. Then we have our interest of 87, and then we go on to have our principal of 2,139, and then we have our ending balance of 2,190. So now the goal is to ensure that the amortization schedule is complete by filling in each and every blank space that is left in the last period basically of your amortization schedule, which is in this case is period 10 or month 10. Your ending balance must be zero, right? Your ending balance must always be zero. So there's certain adjustments that you have to do, and I'll show you why we need to make them, right? Let's start first with inserting our interest rate or our interest amount in row 10 or month 10 or period 10. So in this case, our interest rate will be obviously 2,190. Okay, 2,190 multiplied by our 2% per month, which is 0.02. Okay, that gives us 443.8. All right, so remember that we're dealing with whole numbers, so we need to round that off. So when we round it off, we get 44. All right, so from 43.8 to 44. Okay, so we're going to have 44 here under interest. Okay, so now we can't necessarily put 2,226 on the payments, because if our goal is to get zero and we deduct 44, which is the interest, from the payment of 2,226 to get the principal won't be the same as the ending balance, and therefore if the principal is not the same as the ending balance and you subtract them, you're not going to get zero. So let me show you this. So for example, let's put 2,226, then we are going to subtract 44 from 2,226. So 2,226 minus 44, that will give us 2,182 there. So obviously we can see that when we subtract this 2,182, right, from 2,190, we are going to get an 8, right? We're going to get an 8, and initially our ending balance is supposed to be what? 0. So already there's something wrong here. There's something that is not right. So we need to ensure that we need to make an adjustment now to ensure that our payment is good enough that when we subtract 44 from it, it will give us a principal that is similar to the ending balance for period 9 or month 9. And when we subtract the principal for period 10 or month 10 from the ending balance for month 9, it should give us what? 0, right? That's what we are aiming for. So in order for us to do that, we're going to say x, okay, minus 44. All right, x minus 44 is equals to 2,190. Okay, so a very simple method, like I mentioned, straightforward, straight to the point. So we know that what we're trying to do here is now find x. So x in this case is our payment. All right, so we're going to say x minus 44 is equals to 2,190. So we're going to write x there, and then we're going to take 44 to the other side. So it's going to turn into 2,190 plus 44. Okay, so this is what we have here. So when we do the calculations there, okay, so we're going to have x is equals to, when we add 2,190 plus 44, we get 2,190 plus 44, we get 2,234. 2,234 kwacha. Okay, so this is how much we are basically getting. So our x here, which is our payment, is 2,234. So we're going to get this 2,234 and put it here under our payments. So that's our final payment for month 10. Okay, so that now when we subtract 44 from this 2,234 minus 44, we get how much? We get 2,190. Okay, so we get 2,190. Okay, now that we have 2,190, if we subtract this principal from the ending balance of period 9 or month 9, what are we going to get? We're going to get a 0. Okay, now we have a 0. Yeah, don't mind my 0, but I just want to make emphasis, so I have to. Yeah, so we now have our 0 there, and that's our ending balance for period 10. That means that we've basically, by period 10, we've basically paid off our entire mortgage loan. Okay, so we're done there. So now we're just going to have the totals here. Obviously, when we add everything under the principal, right, we're going to add everything under this part, the principal, this column, the principal column. So when we add everything together, you will see that it will give us 20,000 kwacha, right? So our principal amount is equal to our first ending balance in period zero. Not only that, when we add our interest, right? When we add our interest together, that should give us around 2,268. 2,268. So 2,268. So when we add the total for our interest amount, our interest amounts, we're going to have 2,268. That's for our interest. And then we are also going to have to sum up our payments, right? So what I usually do, because you're working with time, this is a test, you only have, let's say, an hour or so, right? So sometimes your test is going to be 1 hour long or 1 hour 30 minutes. It depends with the duration that has been set, right? So you really need to be quick. You really need to be on your feet, ensuring that you're doing things in the shortest amount of time, doing the right thing in the shortest amount of time. So sometimes you're going to have to create shortcuts of your own. And one of the shortcuts that I created for myself when I was doing financial management was that when it comes to the payments, I know that it's the same payment of 2,226 from period one all the way to period what? All the way to period nine. So I would say 2,226, right? How many periods do we have where the payments are the same? We have nine periods. So 2,226 times 9, right? I get a total of 20,034, right? 20,034. And then from this total, I now add the last payment, which is 2,234, right here where I'm scribbling, right? I hope you can see that. Yeah, so let me just erase that. Okay, so I'm going from the 20,034, I'm going to add 2,234. So let's add that 2,234, which will give me a total of 22,268. That's my total under the payments. That's my total payment amount for the entire 10-month period. Now, if we look at our interest, right? If we were to subtract our interest, our total interest from our total payments, what do we get? Let's do that. So 22,268 minus 2,268, which is our interest, we get our principal of 20,000. And our principal of 20,000 is equal to our first ending balance here in period zero. So we can see that we've cleared out our loan and we've actually made adjustment to ensure that everything is settled. Okay, so in a nutshell, this is our loan amortization schedule. Okay, this is what we have, this is what we come up with. So this is something that Mr. Kaira would be looking for. But one more thing before we actually come to the end of this. So just here at the bottom, it's important to just highlight this part here, which is 2,234, which was our last payment that we had to adjust, that we basically um, calculated using this. Yeah, that we calculated here. Okay, so we need to just make a small comment, right? So we can easily say um, last payment slightly higher due to rounding off. Okay, so that's the comment that you can easily put just somewhere below at the bottom to just highlight to say, okay, the last payment is slightly different from the others due to rounding off adjustments and stuff to just get to the point where you have a zero ending balance. Yeah, so this is basically it for our two examples on time value of money. So you can just have a last look at what we have here, and then you can basically just go through it, try and do it on your own, and see how basically you can come up with solutions to it. Yeah, and see if you actually get the same thing, because you're trying to test yourself to ensure that you're prepared for this particular test. Not only for this test, but it's a skill that you need to attain even as you become a finance expert. And lastly, I would just like to end by saying thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. Not only is it helping us, but it's also helping you guys grow as well, you guys improve. So you're doing it mostly for your own benefit. So if you have the time, if you want more content like this, please ensure that you subscribe to the channel. This video in particular has not been made public to everyone else, but it has only been made available to you guys who are doing financial management under humanities, because of the request that was made by certain people for us, uh, by some of your colleagues, to basically create something that would help them understand certain concepts to do with time value of money. So I hope this has been of great help. Please take time to just practice the questions that you can see on the screen right now. These will really help a lot. And if you'd really want to get to understand more with regards to financial management, if you know that you're struggling and you'd like to have a tutor, please feel free to sign up with us. We are more than willing to help you improve in your financial management career. So thank you very much once again, and all the best in your test.